right, good afternoon to everyone who's watching this broadcast. I hope you have had a wonderful week and are looking to a bright and sunny weekend. Before we start our book sharing this afternoon, let us bow down our heads in prayer. Almighty and eternal Father, we thank you so much that you have given us this wonderful week to serve you and to be of service to everyone that we are ministering to. Lord, we ask that you be with us this afternoon, this hour, in this book sharing, so that all the things that we discuss will be in accordance with your will. Bless our speaker, bless our equipment, and bless all those who are watching this afternoon. We pray this through our most powerful name of Jesus. Amen. All right, so let's put up our slides so that everybody will get to see. All right, I hope you're all seeing this very clearly. All right, this afternoon we would be discussing The Innovator's DNA, written by Jeff Dyer, Hal Gregersen, and Clayton Christensen. First of all, I think we have to understand, let's get right to it, what we mean by some keywords as you see here in the book cover. The three words that we would have to define would be 1, innovator, 2, DNA, and 3, disruptive. An innovator is basically someone who introduces new methods, ideas, or products. Someone who comes up with something new and different. DNA, I think that's a common term. For those who don't know what it is, it's a biological term, which simply means a combination of proteins that are found in the genes of a species. It makes a certain group of organisms unique, okay, and it differentiates one group from another group. Right. So when we say innovator's DNA, we basically mean what makes an innovator, what differentiates an innovator from everybody else. And of course, the last term that we would like to define would be disruptive. Disruptive would mean any action that changes or disturbs the current situation or the status quo. So if we combine all of these, our book talks about what makes people who introduce new things who they are, right? So what makes them who they are? All right, now why on earth are we talking about this? It's a business topic in an educational setting. In my attempt to understand the Indonesian educational system so that it will help me create the programs I was supposed to make for the school, I had to understand what were the requirements of the government when it came to curriculum 2013. Part of those changes that were made to this curriculum was to introduce the Kada Tiga and Kada Empat. Right? I had to go through the government documents and explanations, which eventually brought me to references like this one, the one that you have on the screen. This one comes from the Ministry of Education, or the Kemendikbud. So focusing my attention at the 4th base competency, Kada Empat, which tackles keterampilan, I found out that the skills that were being talked about here by the government were based on a certain Dyer, who was published by the Harvard Business Review as the Innovator's DNA. As you can see here, right? It's an official document from the government, and it bases this particular competency on this particular research. Okay, as I still wanted a clearer insight on what it was all about, I tried to look at this and try to understand what it's all about. But I had to go to the source because this is very sketchy. You don't really know what it means at the core. So after looking for what this was all about, I was brought to this book, to the original research by Jeff Dyer. okay, which I am sharing right now. So that's the reason why. So the things that we're going to be talking about this afternoon is basically an exploration of the government kada empat, right? That was based on this. So hopefully after this hour, things will be clearer for you how to apply this fourth competency as it was intended to be. I think essentially because we want the education department, the ones who designed the curriculum, wanted to create innovators. So the education system was not only providing knowledge, but also skills for creativity or to make people innovate and change this country in the future, which is quite impressive. Right? Okay, but we all have to understand what it's all about, right? Okay, so how innovative are you in the first place? So if you'd like to know how much of an innovator you are, you can take the quiz. It's linked on the screen. It's quite easy. It's bit.ly/innovators DNA quiz. That's open only to our own circle. You can answer that at any time. There are a few questions. After you submit, I will send you through email simple results based on what you have submitted to help you profile yourself. But that's only a small part of it. If you want a more extensive one, you can visit www.innovatorsdna.com. That's the official page of this group who did the research. Okay, so you can do that at any time at your convenience. All right, now, what was the primary purpose of our authors in coming up with this research? They wanted to know what makes innovative business ideas. What's the secret sauce of business success? Basically, what makes Apple's Steve Jobs, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and eBay's Pierre Omidyar? Okay, so I think you would know these big names, right? Apple, Amazon, and eBay. What sets them apart and makes them masters of innovation? How can we replicate them? Since we're in education, how do we replicate these? Pass a test, but how to innovate? So what they did was they interviewed nearly 100 inventors of revolutionary products and services, as well as founders and CEOs of game-changing companies built on innovative business ideas. Now, they also included roughly 500 innovators compared to roughly 5,000 executives, senior executives, basically those who run the company. Right. So they even talked to these people on screen. You have Michael Lazaridis of BlackBerry, Michael Dell of Dell Computers, Mark Benioff of Salesforce, and so on and so forth. These are all famous names of companies that are now in $1 billion industry or multi-million-dollar industry. Okay. So what they found out was that the behavior exhibited by these innovators were similar and can be summarized into 5 primary discovery skills. Those are associating, questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. Okay? So those are the 5 skills they found that was basically in all these innovators, okay, to some degree. And I think you'll notice that these skills are the ones that are emphasized by the curriculum. Okay, so in summary, the key skill for generating innovative ideas is the cognitive skill of associational thinking or associative thinking. The reason that some people generate more associations than others is partly because their brains are just wired that way. But a more critical reason is that they are more frequently engaged in the behavioral skills of questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. So all those from all those 5 skills, association is the one that puts everything together. And you get to associate because of the four skills. So the exposure to the four skills of questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting allow you to associate. And once you do all of those, you get to become more innovative or more creative. So in this diagram, what you're going to see is that the innovator is shown as taking up the challenge to innovate, using the behavioral skills to stimulate associational thinking or associative thinking and eventually bring about innovative business ideas. This is what sets them apart from the rest. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that innovators are the only ones who are special. No, and drive the success of the company. No, that's not it. There are other leaders who also get the job done, such as the general company leadership or the senior executives. But innovators and executives have each a dominant skill set to bring that to the table. So innovators bring out something else than what executives have. Both are necessary, but they have different functions. Okay. So for the innovators, they have all these discovery skills, right? But for the executives, okay, they're better at delivery skills, which are critical for delivering results and translating an innovative idea into reality. Okay. So whatever the innovators come up with, the executives deliver. Okay. Deliver. So these are important in the business life cycle. So just very quickly, this is from page 35 of the book and shows how each of the skills we mentioned play a role in the business life cycle. At the startup stage, when the company is still starting up, innovators are primarily rewarded as new ideas and concepts are at the center. Okay, after you have the vision, the drive, this is what we want, these are the new ideas that we want to be launched, etc., etc. Practical matters come in. And this is where our delivery skills are needed. Okay. So the executives come in and management comes in. And at the growth stage, delivery skills become more and more important. Until at a certain point when the company starts their ideas are already old. It's not as new as it used to be, or it's not as competitive as it was. Then innovators come back in to the picture to revive whatever or to move the company forward into the next stage. Okay, but essentially the innovators are the ones who push the idea out into the world and make the great change. Okay. Now, we have to understand that these skills can be learned as behavior can. We should not just think that these skills are gifts and no one else can have them. We all have the capacity to become as innovative and disruptive as any of the CEOs and visionaries mentioned. In a study made by Reznikov, Domino, Bridges, and Honeyman on creative abilities in 117 pairs of twins, they found out that 80 to 85% of the performance of these twins in intelligence tests can be attributed to genetics. So in terms of intelligence, genes play a role. But in creativity tests, only 30% showed genetics was at play. Okay, so genetics can significantly influence intelligence, but not so much with creativity. This plainly means that we can get better at being creative or innovative. And we can't just say, I wasn't born with it. It's something that you can actually develop. Okay, so I quote from the book. It says, okay, so you're not Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or any other famous business innovator. But that doesn't mean you can't learn from these innovators. You can get better at innovating, even if most of your innovations are somewhat incremental in nature, slowly growing, or just step by step, you're moving into something new. Okay, so imagine that you have an identical twin, same brains and natural talents that you have. You are both given 1 week to come up with a creative new business idea. During that week, you come up with ideas alone, just thinking in your room. By contrast, your twin talks with 10 people, including an engineer, a musician, a stay at home dad, a designer, about whatever it is. Visits different companies to observe what they do, samples new products and takes them apart, tries experiment stuff, shows a prototype he's built to 5 people and asks them, what if I try this? What do I do to make this work? What if it doesn't work? Okay. At least 10 times each day during these networking, observing, and experimenting activities. Who will come up with a more innovative and usable idea? Most likely you'll say the twin that went out and met people and experimented and talked to a lot of people about whatever their idea was. Okay. So people can learn to be more capable of coming up with innovative solutions to problems by acting in a way that your twin did, right? Okay, so now let us talk about Steve Jobs of Apple, a model of innovation. Steve Jobs felt that personal computers should be quiet, coming in part from all the time he'd spent studying Zen and meditating. That's another experience he had. He felt that the noise of a computer fan was distracting. It was too loud. You can't concentrate. So he was determined that Apple II, then, this was long, long time ago when it was still starting, would have no fan, which was a new idea at that time. Then, because of that, Apple II became the model that launched the company Apple. At that time, everyone accepted that all computers have fans built in them to keep them from overheating. So what did Jobs do? He felt that no, that shouldn't be the case, right? But the only way he could do that was to change the power supply uh, to something that generates less heat. It was the power supply that creates all the heat in the computer. So he went out and met Rod Holt from Atari, and they came up with a revolutionary power supply that made the Apple II the quietest and smallest personal computer ever made. It's smallest because there's no fan. Okay, the thing that made the computer big before was the fan, right? So if Jobs did not start with his experiences and his questions like, why does a computer need a fan anyway? How do we keep a computer cool without a fan? He wouldn't come up with all these new ideas that would make Apple what it is today. So that's an example of the process of innovation that Jobs did, right? So let's discuss each of these skills. So first is to talk about associative thinking. Innovative thinkers connect fields, problems, or ideas that others find unrelated. They don't have any connection. It is our capacity to take in different, seemingly unrelated material and make them into something new or revolutionary. Okay? So associating helps innovators discover new directions by making connections across seemingly unrelated questions, problems, or ideas. Innovative breakthroughs often happen at the intersection of diverse disciplines and field, like physics meets music or art. Okay? When you mix those both, you can come up with very, very creative items. Okay? Innovators basically think differently by connecting the unconnected. They actively pursue diverse new information and ideas through questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting. Okay. Now, author Franz Johannesson described this phenomenon as the Medici Effect. The Medicis were famous in Florence, Italy, because they brought together creators of different disciplines. Okay, sculptors, scientists, poets, philosophers, painters, architects. And once they all came together, they created new ideas. Okay, and because they were all together in one place, they created the Renaissance, the most one of the most innovative eras in our history, in world history. Okay, this is where inventions were flying through the roof. They were everywhere. You had so many geniuses and excellent things being created. Right. So to illustrate how associations produce innovative business ideas, this is Mark Benioff of Salesforce.com. It's a 13 billion software company. Now, he went on a trip. So basically, 25 years, he was at the in this company, and during that time, he observed Amazon and eBay. So while he went on a trip, on a holiday trip, he just thought about why aren't all software applications like Amazon and eBay? Okay, why? Um, then he started thinking, hmm, uh, can we combine enterprise software, Amazon, and eBay style business? So that brought about the business of Salesforce. He borrowed elements of Amazon and built a different one, a software system that companies would pay for as they use them, and not before they use them. Before, people just bought CDs and then bought the whole system before trying it out. Now for him, nope, it's already on the internet. And that created Chatter, a new software application that was like Facebook for business. It all led towards all these things that, because of cloud computing, the material is already in a cloud, which was new at that time. He was able to create all these different innovations that are available now on the market. Another good example is Walt Disney. Now, one day, Walt Disney was talking to a little boy, and the little boy was asked Disney, "What's your job? Right? What's your job? What really? Do you draw Mickey Mouse?" And then Disney said, "I do not draw him anymore. So do you think about all the jokes and ideas?" The boy asked him, and then he said, "No, I don't do that." So, Mr. Disney, just what do you do? And then Disney said, "I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody. I guess that's the job I do." So Disney basically goes around and sparks others' ideas. And then he puts himself into that intersection of ideas to bring forth this whole industry that he has brought about, that we all know today. Okay, so all these different companies that you have right now do exactly the same thing. Creativity is connecting things. That's what Steve Jobs says. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something, they were able to connect experiences, and then they synthesized new things. All right, so this is how they do that. Okay, so how does associating happen? How it happens? First, there's odd combinations. Innovators think in a way that put unrelated items together to come up with a fresh new idea. So Omidyar of eBay combined post office and fresh produce that led to eBay. He was basically thinking of what is that something that visits every house every day of every week. Okay, and that's the post office. And most likely, the best way to reach the market through that is through the post office. So he was putting all these ideas. How can you have a product and then the post office together, and that led to eBay. Okay. Then there's zooming in and zooming out. Innovative entrepreneurs often exhibit the capacity to do two things at once. They dive deep into details to understand uh, customer experience, and then they go out and try to see the bigger picture. Okay, so Steve Jobs zoomed in to details of plastic products in a department store, and when he was out in a parking lot, he looked at the metal design on a car. This led him this led him to the plastic casing that we have right now for MacBooks, and the metal design and everything that make Apple have their hardware in. Okay, um, then because he got into Pixar, also not just computers, he zoomed out to the whole media industry. So when he came back to Apple, he was able to introduce all these things that came into Apple that brought us to iTunes, iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Without those zooming in and zooming out experiences, he would not come up with anything new. And you can also describe it as Lego thinking. Okay, the more blocks that you have, the better structure you can come up with. Okay, so the more experiences you have, the more you can put things together to create a new thing. Okay, so these are some tips to develop association. One is to force new associations. Really force the idea. Let's say, for example, microwave and dishwasher. So one company basically came up with an idea that um, allowed a product to be a dishwasher, but also create that heat to clean and sanitize dishes. Okay. Another one is to look uh, at your company from a viewpoint of another company, or just take someone else's perspectives. Another one is to generate metaphors, like what if watching TV was like reading a magazine, which is basically what TiVo did and changed TV watching forever, right? Then you can have your collection of odd, interesting things that can be put into a curiosity box or bag. Okay, so you just bring this out, and then what can I connect this with, and maybe this thing too, you know. Um, and then you also have scamper. You substitute, combine, adapt, magnify, minimize, modify, put to other uses, whatever you have, you know. An example of this is this one here, which was about creating a new type of wristwatch. Yeah, so you can substitute, use natural wood or rocks instead of steel. So normally that don't go together. So what new ideas can you have from that? Okay. Now let's move on to questioning. Okay, second one. Okay. Questioning for innovators really provide them passion, right? They have a thirst to know things. Um, Innovators ask lots of questions to better understand what is and what might be. They ignore safe questions. They opt for crazy one. They shake the status quo by asking more and deeper questions. Now, Oret Gadish of Bain and Company challenged companies by her questioning skills. So she was working for this steel mill company, which was producing 350 products. So because of her questioning, they were able to whittle that down to 30, because she kept on questioning, what is this product about? Why do we need this product? And so on. She even questioned the customers. She questioned everyone. And that, because of that reduction, allowed the company to be more profitable. You just need to find the right question. This may be the one skill we have to teach our students. Answers don't show intelligence. Questions do, right? Okay, so how to ask disruptive questions? Okay, basically we have to ask what is, what caused, why or why not, and what if. Okay, for example, for what caused, there was this one inventor who wanted to present a 15-minute card game to Mike Collins, who was the CEO of Big. Uh, Big means Big Idea Group. So uh, Collins thought that that's just, how could this game that you have really, there are just so many games on the market. Why do we have this? So instead of rejecting the inventor, he asked, what caused you to develop this game? So the inventor basically said, well, I don't have really time for my family because I work very late. When I come home, I need to spend time with them, but not so much time, because there are other things that have to be done. But I also need to do things with my family as well. So that gave way to what is known as the 12-minute games sold through Target now, and it was marketed as something for families, busy family men to spend time with their families. So that because of that question, it led to more and more things like the Polaroid camera. The reason why there's Polaroid is because the daughter of the inventor, Edwin Land, kept on asking, why can't I see the pictures now? Why? So because of that, Land ended up creating instant photography, right? And you know the whole story of that, right? Eventually, it led to many things, right? So that's questioning. So changing our questions can change the world. The key is constantly creating better questions to see that world in new eyes. Okay, all right. So what are ways that we can develop questioning? So we can engage in question storming instead of brainstorming. Write down 50 questions that you'd like to ask about a particular problem, okay, instead of coming up with answers. All right. Another one is when identifying problems or challenges, normally we create statements, right? This is the problem, etc. Transform that statement into a question. Okay, what are we not doing right? Right. So that will sharpen the way we look at problems. Okay, and it makes us more responsible in answering them because it's a question, right? Tip 3 is to build a question and answer ratio, a high question and answer ratio, meaning your questions not only outnumber answers, but you develop better questions that produce greater value in terms of answers. Okay. And you can, fourth is to come up with a journal or record how much questioning you have in a day or within a lesson, which you can actually do with your students. What questions do you have? What type of questions do you have? Do you really ask and try to be inquisitive in the class? Okay. Third skill is observing. Most innovators are intense observers. They carefully watch the world around them, and as they observe how things work, they often become sensitized to what doesn't work. Okay. Now, if you become more observant, you'll be superior to solving a problem. Right. All right. So, for example, you have Corey Ride of Media Mouth. This is their website. Okay, so basically he creates softwares that helps you learn speak a new language. Okay, so he at one point he was on a trip to Brazil, and he got to talk to different people and was surprised that there were several of the Brazilians who were excellent in speaking English. And when he tried to find out uh, uh, what makes an excellent speaker, what differentiates the speakers, he thought that the best ones all went to a tuition center or all went to a class. But he found out no, the best ones actually learned in unorthodox ways, like watching movies. Okay, so he tried to find out why um, most Brazilians or most language learners did not just watch movies so that they'll learn um, to speak English. So what he found out was that the speaking was too fast, excuse me, or uh, they could not really catch up with the idioms, right? So he created this software known as Movie Mouth, known as Movie Mouth, um, so that the viewer can slow down the speech of the speaker, select words and hear them pronounced or defined, identify idioms and their meanings, and insert one's own pronunciation into the mouth of the actor. So because he started observing all these speakers that he met in a certain country, he was able to come up with a better idea for his software company, right? Okay. Now, observation has the power to transform companies and industries. Basic observation is the big game changer in um, in a company. Okay, effective observation requires putting yourself in new environments. It involves watching people to see what products and services they hire to help them do their jobs. Okay, so once you watch and hone your observation skills, you discover what can change the environment or the certain job that you are watching. So, what are some tips? One is observe real people in real life situations. Try to grasp what they like and hate and what they would like to get done. As teachers, we observe our kids. Do we really look at them and see, while they're answering their math question or their science question, um, how are they getting the job done? All right. Second one is pick a company to observe and follow, such as Apple or Google. That's for companies. For schools, pick a good school. What do they do that make them the best school there is? Or pick a good teacher. What makes this person the best teacher? And then you could use that as a model for your own style of teaching. All right. Set aside 10 minutes each day to simply observe something intensively. Okay. And then observe with your senses. So instead of just observing with your eyes, smell, taste, feel. Okay. Get your senses immersed in the environment that you want to observe. And that could bring you more ideas as you observe, right? So in the classroom, how do we get students to build observation skills? How? How do we do that? Okay. Think of ways that we can build observation skills for our students. Fourth is networking. Thinking outside the box often requires linking the ideas in your area of knowledge with those of others who play in different boxes, who are outside your sphere. Okay. Now, consider Michael Lazaridis of Research in Motion. He attended a fair, a trade fair, and listened to a speaker who described a wireless data system that it designed for Coca-Cola. That system wirelessly signaled when a vending machine needs refilling. You know, that was revolutionary at the time. So Michael thought of, how can I tap this for my interactive pager? Okay, pager. You know what a pager is, right? You might be at that age. You know what a pager is, right? It's a small thing that sends text to you. Okay? And that led on and on to BlackBerry. Okay? Because of that experience, that led to BlackBerry. Okay? All right, so that's one good example of networking. Okay, another one is from Zango, the Mangosteen Juice. So Joe Morton went to Malaysia and found out two things that Malaysians liked: durian and mangosteen. and he tried to find out what these two fruits have as a benefit to health. And that brought him to work with his brother David, who was getting a PhD in the University of Utah Medical School. And because they know each other, he was able to uh, create this new product that had all these benefits, and they marketed it, and it became a huge thing, $1 billion company known as Zango, okay, the Mangosteen Juice. So from Malaysia, and then from the medical field, here's this entrepreneur, health buff, who came up with $1 billion idea. Okay. So networking is most likely to spark innovative ideas when you initiate conversations with folks from different social networks. Okay. This means talking to people from different places, age groups, economic groups, political groups, and religions. Okay. You need to have diversity of ideas. That's why TED Talks is an excellent way to find out more and more about the world beyond you. Okay. So some tips is list 10 people you would typically talk to if you're trying to get an idea. Who are they? Are they from different places? Okay. Plan to have a meal with someone from a different background at least once a week. Select one conference or one place that you'd like to go to that is not within your sphere. Okay. Something new. Surround yourself with creative-minded people. Or bring in a smart person from a different background, and have lunch with this person, or have a team discussion with this person. Find experts in different functions, industries, and sit in their sessions and talk to them. Okay. Now, in the classroom, how do we build this skill for networking? Right? Think about that. And lastly, you have experimenting. When most people hear the word experiment, they think of scientists in white coats running experiments in a lab. For business innovators, they try out new ideas by creating prototypes and launching pilot tests. But unlike scientists, they don't work in laboratories. The world is their laboratory. So you have Jeff Bezos experimented offering a book catalog online when the internet was still new. This became Amazon.com. Okay, so for him, he really encourages his employees to go down blind alleys and experiment. Just try something out. Okay, so that raised the number of innovations that they produced, especially when they tried to cut down costs and focused their efforts in experimentation that allowed the company to grow. Okay, most innovators in the study engage in at least one of three forms of experimentation. Okay, the first is trying out new experiences through exploration. Okay, second is taking things apart, and third is testing an idea through prototypes or pilot studies. Okay, now here are just a few examples of how experimenting has benefited innovators and their companies. Steve Jobs studied calligraphy, or the art of handwriting, in Reed School. This brought about the fonts that we have in Apple. Max Levchin tried out encryption technology in a Palm Pilot to store sensitive information. And this brought about PayPal. And of course, IKEA. They didn't know how to bring home a set of furniture from a photo shoot. So they tried to break down the furniture so that it could fit into a truck. And that led to IKEA, the way we know IKEA today, right? Do it yourself. Okay. So innovators engage themselves in these three types of experimenting to generate data and spark new insights, trying out new experiences, taking things apart, and testing ideas by creating prototypes and pilots. Okay. All right. So what are some tips for developing experimenting skills? Visit a new country or some new other environment, such as different functional area within your sphere, school, or industry. Take out a new annual subscription to a newspaper, newsletter, or magazine from something else. So if you're in education, you could read business stuff, or you could read something else that is not of your sphere. Gain new perspectives, create a plan to develop some new skills or acquire new knowledge. Look for opportunities in your community to learn new skills, maybe in acting, photography, or some basic training in mechanics or electronics. Look through your house for something that no longer works, right? And try to make it work, right? Identify something that you would like to improve. What would it look like if you changed it? Engage in frequent pilot tests, okay? Small scale experiments. Try out new ideas. And actively seek to identify emerging trends by reading books, articles, magazines, web links, and so on. These would eventually enable you to have the experience needed and the stimulus to get into experimentation. Now, how do we build experimenting skills in our classroom? How do we build those? Now, the first and foremost innovator in the classroom should be teachers. Teachers need to observe well, question well, network well, and experiment well, and process all of that in associative thinking. Let's look at how adults influence the growth of the likes of Jobs, Bezos, and Gadish. Our innovators all had adults supporting their growth and discovery. Steve Jobs built electronic kits with his neighbor on a workbench provided by his father when he was young. Steve Jobs, when he was young. Jeff Bezos, when he was young, was allowed by his grandparents on their farm to experiment on things. Richard Branson of Virgin Corporation or Airlines, his mother allowed him to discover new terrain. Auret Gadish had her parents and teachers not only tolerate her questions, but valued them, told her keep on asking questions. When she was young, she loved asking questions. So she was not shot down. She was even encouraged to do so by her parents and by her teachers. Okay. So the challenge when we want to build association in the classroom is to nurture individuals with regard to their discovery skills. So we can ask students to associate the current topic or lesson with something odd or out of the box, right? Like algebra with dancing, right? Or inertia with Warcraft, if you play the game Warcraft, or Mobile Legends. So two things that to a teacher's mind normally don't go together. You can just write down things and then on slips of paper and then ask the kids to just, pick two and then, how can these two be connected with each other? Okay. Encourage students to create products, concepts, ideas, but creating connections within your field and out of your field. How can I use calculus outside? How can I use this particular subject outside? In reality, okay. Yeah. Questioning in the classroom. Encourage students to ask without feeling stupid. Normally, it's because we are afraid to look stupid or uncooperative that we don't ask questions. How do we encourage that? We ask inquisitive questions ourselves. Let them question what makes an essay effective, or why is Marie Curie a famous scientist, or why is COVID so difficult to contain? Allow them to question storm. Okay. Log students' questions and ask them to analyze the questions they ask in class. So as they ask questions, write these down and take note of the questions they ask in class. You could model questions that dig more than usual. Instead of, do you understand, or does anyone have a question? We could ask the students, what do you feel about this particular part of the lesson? Or if you were an expert in the field of whatever, how would you simplify the lesson for everyone in the class? If we remove this step in the process, what would happen? Or why is this step needed? Okay. Ask students, why do they have to learn this particular part of the lesson? Is there a simpler or more practical way of learning this? Okay, so that's one way of building questioning in the classroom. Observing. Let students observe you solve a problem. Ask them what they notice. Don't give it to them. Ask them, what do they notice? Okay. Provide situations where students get a real world view of things and apply the lessons they were asked to study and see them at work. Let them see your lessons in real life. Observe it, experience it, and then bring about more questions. Networking. Ask them to ask people beyond the class to talk about themselves and their life. Then ask students to relate ideas from the classroom to this person's life or work. Bring in speakers to enrich the views of the class about a certain topic. Encourage cooperative learning. Provide roles and get into dramatic expressions of your topic, okay, because that provides you different perspectives. How will a fireman think of this? How will someone from a different subject think about this? Ask them to do something radically positive with their peers. Let them work together with someone or some of their friends to do something positive. Or assign them TED Talks. Let them watch different TED Talks and let them combine all these ideas to come up with something that's related to your subject matter. Networking. And for experimenting, challenge students to try out various modifications of a concept you would like to teach. Instead of telling students what will happen, get students to try things out. For example, in sociology, you could try to get students to exchange homes for a night. This is just a suggestion. This means everyone in class stays a night at another classmate's house, right? But they themselves are not in their house. It's like an exchange student thing. This happens, right, in between schools, but this one is just in the class. And then this may allow insights about different families to come about and an appreciation for their classmates. Ask students to take something apart and gather insights about what they think, right? Ask students to build a prototype of a communication device. They could relate this to electronics, media, communications, art, physics, music, business, math, just by coming up with a prototype of a communication device, let's say a phone or something else that can be used in the same way, right? All of these can be related to all these different subject matters. Okay, so the experiment. Okay. Now, I hope all these ideas help you think about how to build innovators in the future by creating lessons that allow students to develop creativity in your classroom. Keep on thinking on how we can make our students innovate so that in the future they can change the world for the better. Okay. Who knows? You might have the next Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, or Jeff Bezos in your class. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this book sharing, and I hope it blessed you and gave you ideas to create a better classroom. Thank you very much.